So you were in college running a dive shop in Mexico, and then you would just come back and take tests?
Yeah, yeah. So I had an agreement. I had an agreement with the dean. So for about 2 years or so, I took the full time off, and then it was just like, hey, you kind of got to come back to school and finish your degree. I was like, okay, well, I'll make sure I just have the minimum GPA to not get kicked out. She's like, all right, just don't mess up. And so yeah, so I'm an econ major, but I'm kind of like a math numbers kind of a guy, as you can maybe tell on the poker side, playing online. And so I wouldn't say it was easy, but you with math and with economics, you can get to the right answer just with logic and math. So if you just understand those pieces, you can do pretty well. Versus, I don't think you could ever do this if you were like an English major or like an art major or any like difficult major where you actually have to like know know things and create things versus just use logic and math.
What lessons from poker really helped you or have stuck with you or what I guess yeah, what would you take with yourself and from the poker days?
Yeah, I just say outcome independence is probably the biggest thing, and then EV. Those are both the two biggest things. But outcome independence, in its most basic form, means that you don't care what happens, uh, and that's putting it sort of lightly. But the reality is, you do the best that you can do with the knowledge that you have, and if you make the right choices, whatever ends up happening at the end of all of that, you don't mind. And so this works great with sales. This is for people that, I can't sell anything. Why can't I sell? It's like, you're too desperate. So if
Hmm.
you come across, and this is great for home service companies as well, if you just come across like, look, I can give you these options. I think these two are probably the best based upon the situation, the know, and the 10 years I've been installing HVAC, compressors. But you get to make the choice. I'm just laying out the best possible paths for you. I'm just here to educate.
Hmm.
Wow. He's like, you pick. I don't care. Either way, it's going to lead to some sort of sale, some sort of service, some sort of thing. But that sort of like anti pressure really works, both with psychology and then also just as you're putting in the work, the outcome will just happen rather than just constantly being fixated on a particular outcome. Because poker, there's a lot of bad beats. But statistically, there's only as many bad beats as there is the amount of hands that you play.
Hmm.
And so that's the outcome independence. And then EV is just,
Let me ask you
given
one
us,
thing.
yeah,
One thing
go ahead.
on outcome independence, because that goes a little bit against the grain of what I've whatever heard from other people or some people say like it doesn't matter how, just focus on the end result, start with the end in mind, and you'll yeah all that like the result is all that matters. And you're saying that the result doesn't matter. How would you reconcile having just that imposing your will and creating something to make it happen? You're saying kind of like be a little bit more flowy versus more like I don't know, in control.
Yeah. So I would just say, at heart, I love Stoic philosophy, but you know, if you're outcome independent, your self worth, your satisfaction, your emotional state doesn't rely solely on achieving a specific result. And a lot of people have to put a goal out there to get them to do something. But if you're working on something that you do independent of getting paid for it, um, or otherwise, you're going to have a lot easier time doing it. So instead, if you're driven by just like the process, the growth, the experiencing it yourself, one of our core values at Housecall Pro is enjoy the journey.
Hmm.
And one of the reasons is because, you know, I've been doing this now 12 years, and you truly have to enjoy the journey to be able to get this far. And I think it's just a really powerful mental framework. And like I mentioned, it's used a lot in entrepreneurship where you have really high highs and really low lows. It's used a lot in negotiation, sales, personal growth, just all of the things. And then it also improves decision making. So you can really focus on quality actions rather than just becoming emotionally trapped by achieving or not achieving results. And I think that you have to be able to defend your mind a little bit. So as an entrepreneur, a home service, business, whatever it happens to be, being able to operate in that kind of a mindset gives you a leg up versus people are like, oh my God, if I don't make this sale, I'm not going to be able to, keep Danny employed next week or make his paycheck. And then I can't And all of a sudden, all this negativity and like anxiety and things bleed in that force you to make wrong decisions. It may make you discount your services when you knew you shouldn't have discounted. You have to run a certain like net profit, if you're trying to get there to run a good business. So I think really shifting your focus from the outcome to the process helps. It helps you embrace like a long-term perspective. I think people try to avoid short-term pain, but if you avoid short-term pain, you're not making long-term decisions.
Hmm.
And so all those things kind of bleed all together. But it's a funny thing that poker teaches you, because people get tilted. There's a word called tilt, and that's when you get a bunch of bad beats in a row, or things that are statistically unlikely or very like improbable do happen because there's a percent chance that it will. If you play lots of hands, you're going to see them, but you can't have that affect your future decision making. Otherwise, you're going to tilt and make unoptimal plays.
You mentioned something that I had a question about, which is anxiety, and
Yep.
I think a lot of business owners, a lot of people in general, but business owners experience a different level of it. So on paper, which you just said, I 100% agree. Like don't discount or don't get desperate. But when payroll is next week, or when something feels imminent, what have you told yourself, or how have you worked through those moments that feel insurmountable, or like what's the self-talk? How do you actually stay long term?
I think the best thing just to remember is that things that seem big today, when you're 80-year-old, it's going to feel very small and insignificant. And so if you want to take a long-term view, put yourself in the shoes of where you are, when you're 80 years old. And I love the saying, I forget who came up with that, but it's like, make decisions that would make your 8-year-old self proud and your 80-year-old self proud, which means that, you're both like living in the now and in the present. But at the same time, you're essentially able to tell stories down the road that you're going to be proud of, because regardless of what happens, it's going to turn into a story, and might as well make it a good one. So it sounds maybe flippant to say when we're using like the payroll example and someone else is not going to make payroll, but the reality is there's always ways to make things happen, and you just should not try to optimize for minimizing short-term pain, because if you do that, you're going to lose out on the compounding nature of good decisions. Because if you make a good decision followed by a good decision followed by a good decision, you're going to hit that compound nature of those decisions being made. So I think just in general, just put yourself in those 80-year-old shoes, or even 10 years from now. Like, is this really going to be a good story? What's going to happen here, etc.? That'll help you put a perspective on that moment, because everything's going to feel really big in the moment, when in the reality, in the grand scheme of things, probably not so big.
Yeah. Not to harp on this, but I am curious. So in college, you're living the quote unquote retirement dream. Like you're running a dive shop. I think a lot of probably people, I've even myself thought like, hey, when I retire, I'm gonna move to Mexico and open a dive shop. So you did it in reverse. What caused you to not continue down that path, or walk me through what happened?
Yeah. I think I'm an entrepreneur first, and diving was just a passion. And it's really easy to be good at a business or do something well if you're following something that you would do for free anyways. So a lot of people would pay to go diving, which they do. But also, if you were like, hey, do you want to go do this thing for free? I.e., the thing you just asked me, which is like, people would do this when they retire. Essentially, when you retire, you don't need the money, right? Would you do it even if you weren't paid the money? So I think for me, I kind of combine those things, which kind of helped me with my advantages. I like to just outwork people. And I do it because the things that other people seem like is work is not work to me. So I think back then, that was my early 21-year-old self. That was just like, wow, this is super fun, and I get the chance to do it. And hey, I made some money playing poker. Let's go start a business. And I loved it down there, and it was a sense of adventure. And I learned so much down there, and I learned a lot of things not to do in the future too. And so, I think it had really run its course, but it was a very great business, and I did really well. And at the end of it, Yeah, if you do too well, you draw too many eyes, and there are lots of benefits to doing business in the United States versus in other countries where there maybe aren't the same protections. So I think
You have
you
a
know
run in with the cartel or what?
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that, but I will say I ran a great operation, and you had the chance to go on a 44-foot sport fishing yacht and go dive with U.S., Canadian, Israeli dive instructors versus going on a panga, with a little outboard on it. If you had the choice, and there were even if one was 2 or 3 times more expensive, you probably go with that yacht thing because diving is I don't say it's a perilous sport, but as long as you're doing it safely, it's safe. But there's some risks associated with it, and so, anyways, it was a great time, uh, and I think down there a lot of things happen with giving commissions, and so if you had to guide a guest on which place to go and you got 20% commission, would you do it in one that pays you 3 times as much or one time? And so the business worked really well, especially in Cabo, which was back then was the mid 2000s. So it was still I wouldn't say in its infancy. It was popular enough because the airport was there. There wasn't always an airport,
Mhm.
um, but it was coming into its own, and people were coming to spend real money. So that did well, but inevitably, would I put my life on the line for a dive business in Mexico? No, it was a great experience. It was super fun. Lost a bunch of money, made some money. Really just ended up breaking even in the whole thing. But I learned a ton, which is what really matters. And I
Mm.
hope that other entrepreneurs are just, whether it's a failed business venture or not, it doesn't really matter as long as you learn. There's only failure if you fail to learn. And that's what I think is kind of the takeaway there.
Talk to me about your mindset around money because it feels like you came into a sizable amount from poker, and maybe you
Mm,
even had some before that from other early ventures.
sure.
What's how have you approached money? Is it something to pay bills? Is it something to fuel dreams? Like, how do you think about money?
That's a great question. I think money is just an invention and a tool that humans have made to leverage an asset, which is time. And money is a great way to measure effectively value. There's places where it's kind of gone out of touch, but it's okay. But
What do you mean? What do you mean?
when someone is able to generate a very large sum doing things that doesn't really create a lot of value, there's a lot of examples just in finance, in the finance world, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Leverage, all these things. But at its most basic form, it's a way to trade time. And when humans specialize in certain tasks, they can't do all of the things. And so they have to be able to trade time to be able to get the things that they also need for like their basic needs. So like I'm not a farmer, and so I need to trade money or time for money, and then with money I can buy the time that someone takes to produce a vegetable. It's most
Hmm.
basic form. So, anyways, money is a tool that effectively lets you trade time, and with that, if you want to earn more time, you can spend it on all kinds of things that help make you happy or not, just depending on the type of person you are. But you got to treat it as a tool, and all tools have multiple edges, and like anything, it can definitely come back to hurt you if you use it improperly. And the same way you can use it as leverage. And I think anytime you can create any kind of leverage, especially as a small business owner, it's really important. And so I think a lot of small businesses fall into traps where they don't value their own time enough,
Hmm.
um, and they don't set their own hourly rates of what they think they are worth. And what happens is then they get stuck doing things that don't give them the most leverage. So you always go back to like, what can I be doing that gives me the most leverage? What can I be doing that gives me the most leverage? And so with that, I think money is not the end. It's just by accumulating it, you get choice to figure out where you want to spend your time,
Hmm.
and that's different for all people.
Okay, you're talking leverage, and yeah, I mean, you're like a master at leverage, creating a technological platform that with infinite use case. Like that's amazing. But let's arm the local HVAC business owner, and I think the new wave of AI is not hype. It's not something that's just a fad. Like this is changing the landscape. So from your perspective, how can they start implementing AI? Besides, I think everyone thinks, okay, we'll have AI answer the phones. I think everyone like kind of they know that one. But what are some non-obvious ways that a business owner, local service could leverage it?
So I think about AI, especially as it relates to home services, as there's sitting jobs and there's standing jobs. And right now, AI is really good at doing sitting jobs. And I'd say some versions of it maybe are at like a kindergartner level, some are at like a high school level, some are at like a PhD level. It knows all of the things. It doesn't know how to apply all of the things to maybe what HVAC would. But I think within AI, it creates a large amount of leverage so that our pros or HVAC or plumbing or whatever can work on the things that really truly drive their business forward that they can sell more of, which is their services, versus having to do back end office stuff, back end marketing, accounting, having to generate different marketing scripts, even writing up invoices, like by hand. Imagine just talking into, you can just go download ChatGPT, pay the $20 a month, or even now I think it's free to use their voice assistant, but just talk into it and say, hey, here's what I did for the job. And you could say it in whatever terms you want. You could have it be as technical, jargony as much as you want. Make it so a homeowner would understand. And at the end of it, say, transform this into an invoice that a homeowner would understand. And then boom, it just spits it out. So rather than you having to do all these things, it just allows you to leverage your time doing what you do best, which is like troubleshooting, making homeowners feel like they received a 5-star service. And so there's just a lot of force multipliers when it comes to using AI in your business. All of the types of things from answering phone calls to scheduling, to the accounting piece, to bookkeeping. There's a lot of places where you can use it. And I feel like for our pros, if, you've got a great advantage of there aren't as many pros as there is demand, which means, there's less supply than there's demand, which keeps prices high. And it'll probably be that way for quite some time. And I think with AI, you can leverage that to get your time back on things you don't want to do anyways. Run a business, look at P&Ls, all these other types of things versus, delivering the exceptional service, hiring and training great tradespeople, all the things that are very difficult to do that you're very good at, right? That's your specific knowledge, your specific skill. So the more time you can spend doing the thing you're incredibly good at, and the less time you can spend doing on things you don't really want to do in the first place, the better. And AI is great at that.
I hear this narrative and I believe it that that the trades are there's a shortage in the trades on as a whole. However, I know owners of HVAC companies, plumbing companies, whatever, that are struggling to get leads, and they're struggling with business operations, and they're like, it feels like they should, like, if there's a shortage, it should be easier than other businesses. And what are what are the businesses that are crushing it? What are they doing differently than maybe the local mom and pop HVAC business that is just breaking even?
Yeah. I think some of the biggest things, a little spider, I'm going to squish it. Boop. Okay, sorry, it's on my mic. The biggest thing is there's really like 4 pieces of leverage that our pros should be thinking about. And the ones that are doing really well, that the ones that maybe are struggling a little bit aren't. The first thing is just leveraging technology. This is like adopting FSMs or CRMs like Housecall Pro. There's lots of other ones out there if it's like trade specific. Everything from just like being able to automate the dispatching, the AI driven stuff. That just scales efficiency and productivity. The second one is media leverage. So a lot of local mom and pop companies aren't putting their brand out there. a lot of people, myself included, homeowners, I want to have Joe from Joe's HVAC or Tropicool, whatever it is, HVAC. Whatever, those are the types of businesses I want in my home. I don't want Roto Rooter. I don't want like a Benjamin Franklin or some generic, you know, company. So you have to leverage media to do that, whether it's, you know, podcasts, blogs, videos are huge. Releasing YouTube videos simply about what you're doing in your job at a customer's location. Obviously, get their permission, but like that service plus the location in a YouTube name, even if it only gets hundreds of views or low thousands of views, is great because that's like hyper local. So I don't think people are leveraging media long enough. You obviously know a lot about this, but I think like it's not done enough, you know, with the small local businesses.
Mm.
The third one is just product leverage. Like, think about your business. How can you turn it into a subscription style business? Inside of Housecall Pro, you can do like, they're called service agreements or recurring service plans, whatever you want to call them. But how can you be making money even when you're not doing something? It's the most basic form of what it is. And so for HVAC, it's really easy to have an annual, you know, maintenance package, $20 a month. It includes one visit and 10% off any parts and labor if something needs to happen, whatever it is. But you've got money coming in the door, even if your guys are going in and out or not, right? Mobile card detailers will tell me, well, how do I do that? But like, okay, well, normally if you sell, I don't know, let's say like a detail and a clean is like $300, and then you do one wash a year for $100. Rather than charging for those when that happens, why don't you just take that $400 divided by 12 and say, look, for $30 a month, your car is going to look great all year round. Is that worth it? Yeah, that's great. That includes one full detail, inside, outside, plus like a thing like 6 months later. So how can you break what you deliver into smaller packages that are a smaller recurring monthly fee? Because a lot of home service businesses are seasonal. It's important for them to be able to stretch out those dollars and have a base recurring set of income that covers their operating expenses that are also monthly.
Mhm.
Leases on cars, you know, rent, to an extent, payroll, right? But like insurance, all these other things that just happen that way. How can you do that? And then the last thing that they're not leveraging is just systems leverage. Like, what can you do before adding more labor? How can you make the existing labor that you have, the existing employees, just more efficient? Are they doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing? And the easiest way, the most practical tip I'll give the audience that's listening is write down the tasks that your employees are doing and then assign $1 per hour that it's worth. Okay. So like a very common one might be like, oh, well, I have the guys each week, you know, wash their truck and stock their truck and whatever. Okay, Danny, how much is that worth to you? Like, what do you think that's worth? Oh, could you pay, I don't know, a kid out of high school $25 an hour to do it rather than have your techs that could be out on jobs, right? Oh, wow. Yeah, I can. Okay, so what if you have them come on Fridays and do the whole fleet and you pay them $300 for the entire day and clean it all up? Do you think you could send one of your guys out for one extra hour at a $300 an hour billable rate if you had a full day back? Like, yeah, totally. Like, so anyways, those are just like efficiencies. There's a lot of inefficiencies that exist in these mom and pop, and there's a lot of things that people are doing that they shouldn't be doing because their specific trait, their specific skill, their specific knowledge that they have in one thing is worth, I don't know what it is, $200 an hour, $300 an hour, $500 an hour. Have them focus on doing that. And then all the other tasks they're doing, like restocking the truck. It's much easier to hire someone else that's a warehouse manager at $30 an hour that just keeps all the trucks stocked all the time than having, you know, the repair technician who should be out in the field repairing stuff, trying to dink around in the warehouse, trying to find parts and stock their own truck. So think about that as you're building your business. I think a lot of mom and pop, home service businesses get stuck in the trap of like, I can do all the things.
Yeah.
Just because you can do all the things doesn't mean you should.
Right. Yeah, I think the hardest part with that is the delay in results. So you go through that whatever. There's probably a desert. There's an onboarding. There's a training, and it's. But I agree. Yeah, that's the Dan Martell buy back your time. I've been reading through that just multiple times. Like, man,
Yep.
I need to do it myself. But Okay, I need a benchmark here for a mom and pop. I want to give some people. Some, I think a lot of people out there are solo cowboys, and I want to give them a goal. Like in your experience, do you have a sense of what a mom and pop, like an average mom and pop, say plumbing business, um, could be doing? Like, is it at this point? How do I ask this question in a way that is the most helpful? I think like say you're running a lifestyle, you're Roland, you're the owner of a life like a plumbing business in San Diego, and you want to have a good lifestyle. You're not trying to get an exit or whatever, and maybe build something that you can pass on to your kid. Like, what's your mindset? How like revenue a year, head count, profit margin, like what are you thinking?
There's, I mean, this is such a loaded question because it depends on so much. But the way I would think about it is, I would think about how does my lifestyle compare to others around me in the location that I'm in, and so then I think about what is needed to be able to live that lifestyle, and then I want to think about, do I want to be in the top 1%? Do I want to be in the top 5%, top 10%? What kind of percentile do I want to be in? So maybe I would say, okay, I want to be in the top 10%. The top 10%. Okay, so I don't know, in San Diego, maybe that top 10% would be about 200,000 net after taxes in, owner discretionary earnings, seller discretionary earnings. Um, what would it take to make that? Well, $1 million a year gross plumbing company running at about a 20%, net profit. You can get to about 200K. You can get there. But what does it take to build $1 million plumbing shop? I think $1 million plumbing shop you can build with probably 4 people out on the road doing about a quarter million each per year. So worth of production, right? Worth of jobs, which comes to about 20,000 a month, which comes to about $5,000 a week, which comes to about $1,000 a day. So I think hopefully people can start to understand like how you break something like a big ambiguous question down that you asked to like something that is like maybe more palatable or like actionable. But I think that within itself is like a skill that's great for owners of businesses just to think about, right? Like, where do I want to be? What do I want to earn? What do I need to get to be able to do there? How many trucks on the road do I need to have? How many jobs a day do I need to have for each guy to be able to hit $1,000 worth of production per day? Are they doing average tickets 500? So they're doing 2 jobs a day. How can I get 2 jobs, 4 people, 8 jobs per day? Okay, 8 jobs per day. If I close 10% of my leads that I get, I need to be getting 80 leads a day. How do I get 80 leads a day? Right. And so you start just breaking down all these different pieces. And when you have that, you kind of get an understanding from, okay, now I got to zoom out. All right, what am I going to do as a business owner? Oh my gosh, I don't have enough techs to achieve what I want. Okay, I got to go hire. Oh, I don't have enough jobs, right? I need to go out and do more business development. Maybe I got to go to more BNIs. Maybe I got to go talk to more realtors. Maybe I got to go talk to who knows what, right? Maybe I need to work on my SEO. Maybe I need to talk about my media leverage, right? How do I get out there? How do I present my brand? How do I present myself? So it's just, try to zoom out. Success looks different to different people, but think about, where do you want to be relative to others, just in society in general, and where do you think those hash marks are, and then deconstruct what you need to do to get there. And you might find that that's not even the goal you were seeking it within itself, which is likely going to be the case. But hopefully that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, just break it down. You kind of reverse engineer it. That makes a lot of sense. I think anybody could apply that.
Mhm.
Um, when you talk about media, a lot of these business owners, I've only started working with people that just like want it, and I'm like, I'm not here to convince you why video is important. It's just it's just kind of spinning my wheels. So now I've just been focused on people, actually the younger demographic that understand it, and it's just easier. What would you say to say, a 60-year-old business owner about media, social media, video, photos, and the importance of it, and And what kind of things have you seen from the pros that use Housecall Pro? Like what works and what's a waste of time?
Yeah, sure. So I think when you're thinking about media in general, there's really three main objectives that you need to try to accomplish. The first one is you need to build and educate. And what you do is essentially you're building trust and authority. The second piece is you just need to build visibility. And this is to like attract people to you, to engage new customers. And the third pillar really is just conversion, which is getting people to buy your service or to buy you or have you come out. Essentially, you're trying to get prospects to take an action. And so when you're thinking about those three pieces, there's different types of media that you can create. So when you're thinking about building, authority and trust, you're thinking about how-to videos, you're thinking about maintenance tips, you're thinking about behind the scenes, recording the jobs you're doing at the locations you're doing. On your blog, write some guides. If you suck at it, use ChatGPT, and put it in your own words. Do Q&A articles so you can show up for snippets on Google. Think about case studies. So if you're doing like, I don't know, we're talking about plumbing companies, if you're doing like show some remodels that you've done or some complex plumbing issues you've solved, or maybe you notice a certain set of tract homes built by certain developers in the 1980s in those homes. They all have the same problem because they used lead. I don't know, right? And there's something there. Go on podcasts, start your own podcast, talk about plumbing tips and tricks, interview others, interview experts. Social media is really good for the visibility and engagement side of things. So great things for that are before and after pictures, photos, and videos. It's really cool to see the ones where it's like this and it like switches and it transforms, like before and after. People love before and after. If you don't believe me, why do you think HGTV is its entire own channel? I say short form videos are great. Real stories. A lot of people overthink it. If you create long form content, you can then take snippets from long form content and make them into reels and stories. Customer testimonials and reviews are so easy to get and to record. It could be video, it could be text based. You can make it look into something cool. I think meet the team kind of content is always really neat. If you can have whoever you're working with there interview each team member. And so think of it as, I kind of like to think about it as baseball cards. What are their stats? What are their likes? What are their hobbies? What's their family like? When people are buying local, they're buying people. Sure, they want plumbing work done, but they want it done by local people. And yeah, only try to do things like TikTok if you actually really like it. You can't do TikTok well if you're not going to spend the time to do it. So I would allocate your resources somewhere else. Bottom of the funnel, when you think about conversion, make sure you've got great landing pages. And on those landing pages, you've got, the specific service by city, specific service by neighborhood, specific service by geo. Make sure you've got online booking set up. Use something like Housecall Pro, put online booking there. Half of jobs are booked after hours. So if you don't have that on there, or you don't have AI CSR answering your phone for you after hours, you're losing revenue. You're losing revenue. Okay. Don't do that. Think a lot about just near me optimization. This is just, what is content that's optimized for plumber near me kind of searches. Look at local plumbing guides. There's just so many different things. And I think, the last thing is, can you do things that just really help you show your reviews out into the world? You do great work. Don't be shy about asking for those reviews. That's the core part of your business, is referrals, people talking about your business. Show that social proof. Get videos of your customers, get video testimonials, get them to write reviews for you on Google. Use something like Housecall Pro where you can generate reviews automatically after every single job, right? Just do that. But I feel like those are just some tactical tips. But make sure you always kind of adhere to those three pillars. And I don't think enough small business owners think about it that way, which is just like build your brand, your authority through education. Make sure that you're visible so people can find you, and then make sure you can convert. Because the first two without the last one, none of it works.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Okay, we've talked about the mom and pop. I want to switch gears a little bit and actually point to you, because part of when I was thinking about this interview, kind of what I thought about you was somebody that started kind of small, but then grew into something giant. I mean, I don't even know. The Housecall Pro, I don't, thousands of employees. Feel like you guys are like $1 billion company. I don't even know, but is
Yeah,
that public? Are you $1 billion company?
or more. Yeah.
More. Nice, love it. Did so when we were talking about outcomes before, how did you think about entering into this business building journey? Was it we want to get to $1 billion or multiple billion, or was it like just one step at a time? And uh, I want like the universal is found in the specific, so I want to hear your specific about like yeah, just kind of your thoughts about entering into a new business.
The goal was never to build like $1 billion business. We always thought like, could it be a big business? Yeah, sure, maybe. But I think the goal was first just, hey, can we solve this problem? And the first problem we were looking to solve initially was how can we connect homeowners to trusted local pros? That was the first. That was the first kind of idea. And then when we were pursuing that idea, we just ran into the fact that none of the pros had any good software to run their business, especially on mobile phones. Back then, 2013, 2014, 2015, it was like iPhone 4 or 5. They're barely strong enough to do something other than the Apple apps, for example, right? So, it really just transformed into that. But really, after that, it was just one step at a time. It was, let's generate the first $1 million of revenue for the business, the first 10, the first 50, the first 100, et cetera, and
Mm.
so on. So I think, it's just one step after the next. Um, Hire people that are better than yourself. It's really easy for people to get stuck in the trap of making sure that the people they hire aren't the same level, or lower because they feel intimidated. Embrace the fact that there are other people smarter than you out in the world that like to do the things that you don't like to do. That's like a big mind opener, you know? So I feel like when you're thinking about building your business, make sure whoever you hire, you'd be willing to have beers with them after work. And if you're not willing to say yes to that, you're probably hiring the wrong people too.
Mm.
And that's the only way you get to a business of scale is making sure you work with people you like and respect and admire that are all doing things that they can do better than you can do yourself. And if you can do that, you can get to a pretty good outcome.
Was there any moments where you felt like it was
Yeah.
make or break, or your backs were against the wall, or it was, I guess, the hardest season of the business? And if so, what
Yeah.
did you do to navigate it?
Yeah, I mean that's such a that I mean you could do a podcast just on that, but there are so many moments there, throughout building business where, we had to lay people off.
Mm.
We had to go back to kind of the core team and kind of reset. Similarly, when we switched the vision from connecting homeowners to local pros to just building just House Call Pro, was another period in time. But I think it just goes down to, or it really gets down to, are you working on something you care enough about that you're willing to do for a long enough amount of time?
Mm.
And if you are, then it'll be all right. You'll figure it out. Just enjoy the journey, enjoy the ride, and you'll get there. It's an oversimplification, but you'll definitely get there.
Any tough questions? I mean, tough decisions that you would have done differently? Like, I guess from like a lessons standpoint that you're like, wow, I really dropped the ball on this decision.
I mean, there's no just one of those moments. There's constantly those moments. And one piece of advice I give to others is, we do on my team specifically, but we do retrospectives. So that means, each week when we go build something, we go do something, we get back together and we say what went well, what went bad, what was ugly,
Hmm.
and what are the next actions. And military uses this kind of technique in a different way, but software, which is agile development, kind of uses this. But people are like, well, why there are two bad columns and one good column? Because we can all be patting each other around the back. What went great? What went good? It's like, no, it's just, what went good, but really what went bad. And if something goes bad multiple weeks in a row, it turns into ugly, and then that creates actions. How to change that. And so I think anytime there's decisions that we either regret, we don't like, we document it, share it with others. It's open, it's public. As a leader, it's important to show that you're fallible, that you make mistakes. Share your failures openly, and then also your learnings too. If you can do that, then you won't be stuck in an echo chamber of people that just say, "Oh yeah, great idea, Roland, great idea." No, like challenge. Challenge is good. Failure is good. If you can create that open dialogue with your company, those some of just the biggest keys to unlocking autonomy, which is largely what most people want and where they thrive.
I feel like you've sharpened skills and become a master in some way in some areas. Okay, I'm just gonna ask the question. I'm not gonna just like preamble. Okay, what have you ever codified or thought about your methodology for learning, skill development, ultimately mastery? Like there's so many people that start at scratch, and scratch is a universal thing. But like, how have you? I feel like it wouldn't matter the topic if you're interested in it, even if you didn't have any experience in the past. You would go about it in some methodical way, and I'm curious if there's a process there.
Yeah, I'd say for me, the easiest way to learn something that I don't know how to do that I'm interested in is look at others who are doing it well. It's like step one. Learn from them. Then when you try to go do it, define what success looks like, so you kind of know whether you're doing the thing right or wrong. Then you need to be able to do it yourself. And then I think like the last step, this mastery step, really is, can you teach others in a way that they can start that whole journey all over again? And then when you can explain what you're trying to learn to others in a simple way, and then they get it, that's when you know you really understand it, versus you think you know because you can kind of do it, but you still don't really quite know. I think deconstructing difficult things that you're trying to learn into like sub items is important. I think to anything new, if you're trying to do it fast, there's an 80-20 rule to everything. So there's like 20% of the things that you actually need to figure out produce 80% of that leverage. AI is great at asking that. Be like, hey, Danny, I'm trying to learn about Kung Fu. I got to learn it in 1 week. What do I need to do? 20% of things are 80%. Tell me what those are. Like, you can use AI for just a lot of those pieces, but I think, when you can understand just like the basics. So like if I were trying to learn HVAC, what are the different system components? There's like compressor, condenser, evaporator. Okay. And then what are like the basic diagnostics? There's like common problems, and then there's like error code and troubleshooting. And then how do you marry that with like what the customer talks about? And I think with that, you can quickly understand the job of an HVAC technician. And there's if you understand those core principles, 20% is produce 80% of it. But then you have like master people that just do so well, and they just know that last little 20%, which doesn't matter for the first 80%, but that's what really defines someone that is really, did their 10,000 hours, Malcolm Gladwell or that kind of thing. But I think you have to make sure that you can learn it yourself, find others that do it well. You have to make sure that you can kind of break it down into sub things if you need to. What's the 20% that can turn into 80% worth of leverage? Make sure you know what success looks like, so you know if you're doing the thing right or wrong, or you're understanding it right or wrong. And then can you teach others in a way that they can actually pick up and learn? I think if you could do it kind of in that order, I think you'll be all right. You could learn pretty much anything. Humans are good learning machines.
Love it. That's helpful. As we wrap up here, 2 questions. One is, have you had to deal with any, or how have you stayed grounded, humble, and that sort of thing when you look back on what you've built here, and it's pretty astonishing. Is there ever been a moment where it's like you lost your kind of yourself or anything? Was there too much, kind of got lost in the sauce, or has that not been an issue? Or I just feel like for myself, it might be really challenging if I don't know. It's a problem I would like to learn. I'd like to experience this problem maybe one day,
Yeah.
but I'm just curious.
Uh, I think you can maintain perspective a lot, and by that being humble, by either expressing gratitude, whether it's publicly or just to yourself. Um, and if you can make that a daily habit, that's important. But I think in general, people, Ryan Holiday has a great book, and it's just a Stoic thing, but ego is the enemy. I think ego causes a lot of the problems just around being humble and things that you achieve. The reality is like everything's a mixture of like right place, right time, right people, compound interest or compound leverage, mixed with luck. And I think that, and just knowing that you can never know all of the things, you have to consistently stay curious. You always have to learn, and from everybody, there's something to learn. If you kind of keep that perspective in combination with this gratitude piece, I think you'll be able to stay humble.
Mm,
And I don't know. I think it's continuously thinking about that, I guess.
I like that.
That
Yeah.
also helps. But there's no like secret to it. But you do actively have to try to remain that way, especially if you see big success. I do see people that say, "Well, I'm the one that caused this," or I'm the one that this, and it's like, there's so much luck involved in everything. There's luck in where I was born, who I was born to, where I was born.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Last question. I want you to give a little bit of a pep talk. They're not a pep talk, but leave that local mom and pop business owner with with like a word of encouragement, or something that you've learned along the way that you found to be helpful. I just imagine somebody right now that is like, they're got a couple kids, they're just pulled in every direction. Things, they see the possibility of what business ownership could be, but they're just not getting traction and they're feeling burned out. Like, what would you say to that person?
Are you burned out because you're doing something like you really like and enjoy? That's a different type of burnout than you're doing something that you don't like doing in the first place. You can get there quicker. Um, I'd say from a mental framework perspective, sometimes you have to do something just a lot and be repetitive about it and do it over and over and over again, um, before you see any kind of success. And the difference between success and failure are all the people that quit before you did.
I
And if you can be that last person to quit, then you win. I think it's easy to say that, and then you have a whole bunch of people trying really hard, something that they'll never succeed at. But self-awareness does tick in somewhere along there, and I think that's different for everybody. But I'd say focus on what you can control and try not to be affected or distracted by things you can't. And the sooner you realize that, the more freedom you'll have, both in your own mind and just your results.
Awesome. Roland, thank you for coming on the show.
Awesome. I'm glad I got the chance to come here, Danny, and I'm sure we'll see each other again.